Hey, so in this video, I want to kind of walk you through how you can use Claude in order to identify whether or not specific logos that you're interested in pursuing have the buying signals you need in order to actually engage with them. So rather than having to send like 10,000 cold emails and solicit randomly to people who probably don't have the buying signals that you're interested in, you can feed in very specialized information into Claude using normal documents and telling Claude about things such as what your ICP is, like what sort of buying signals are you looking for. And I have a ton of these on the right side of my computer here, which I'm going to get into. And I'm going to walk you through how you're going to be able to quickly identify buying signals for any prospect using just simply a URL. So to prove that I'm not crazy and I'm not just, talking, random here, I want to demonstrate that I've actually done this. So I've used the example of me being a Salesforce rep, and I fed all this information into about Salesforce, their ICP, disqualification, all sorts of relevant information that Claude would need in order to determine exactly whether or not a company is a good fit or not. And I fed all this information in, and all I have to do now is just type in a URL and use that as a method in order to identify whether or not the company is a good fit or not. So I'll just walk you through a couple of examples here. This is a company called Client Ascension. They're a coaching company. I doubt that they would really need the service, and so I didn't really. This is just an example of disqualification, right? So and identify whether this company has relevant buying signals. So it does the research. So based off of the knowledge you provided it, it will do the research and it will identify that it's a cold lead. It tells you what they do. It checks whether they have funding, the leadership, headcount, tech stack changes, strategic objectives, and so forth, and identifies whether or not they're a good fit or not. So, based off of this analysis, it's saying they're not a good fit, and I can move on. I don't need to be thinking about, are they a good fit or not? Another example, and it gives sources too. So rather than you having to, hope that it's coming up with the right information, I have told it in the prompt that you need to give clear sources and identify, whether or not this data is accurate or not, and it does that. So, a different one I've gone with is Disney. Disney, obviously, way different company, multi-billion dollar enterprise. And, it gives a much better interpretation since Salesforce is an enterprise CRM. It's saying, hey, they're a warm lead. And the reason why they're warm is I have told it what sort of triggers I'm looking for. So I've told it, hey, I'm looking for accounts to have like a new CEO appointment, and they're telling they have a new creative officer, and they've made a big investment into digital transformation. They're doing technology modernization. All of these are critical things. I can reference this in my cold email, and it tells you why it matters based off the specific context that you provided, and even gives you a strategic initiative for how you can approach them. But why are they warm and not hot, right? They're already a Salesforce customer. They, CEO transition has not happened yet. They don't have evidence of this CRO or VP sales build out. Digital transformation is AI focused, not CRM focused. It's honest with you. It's not just being sycophantic. It'll tell you clearly, yay or nay. And it gives you the sources so you can go validate yourself if you want to do cross-checking of the AI. AA.com, American Airlines. So hopefully you get the point here. I'm not going to, keep on going on and on, but, it is a quick way to immediately tell whether or not a prospect is a good fit based off of your specific ICP, your specific company buying signals, based off of all this situational awareness about your company we can feed this into AI nowadays and give it a good prompt and generate a relevant result. So hopefully you get the gist of what's going on here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of walk you through how exactly I did this. And the important thing to remember here is that the key is you got to have good knowledge. This is fundamental knowledge. This gets fed into the model. I'm using Opus 4.6, and it's discussed in the prompt, the system's instructions right here. And you don't need any sort of other, you know, like tool or integration. You don't need to pay for like a zillion SaaS wrappers or AI wrappers or whatever they call them nowadays. You don't need any of that. It's to the point. You can just do this in Claude with a Claude project. So I'm going to walk you through some of these documents here. So the first one is most important is you got to have a buyer trigger. What sort of signals are you looking for? So I put, it's like, for example, we need leadership change. We need leadership changes. So, like for example, CRO and VP sales appointments, appointment of CXO executives, other things like it's, and also it's important to mention, the signal strength. How relevant is the signal to you? If it's not relevant at all, you should not be marking it as high, or else it won't. The AI won't adjust for that, and it'll say, "Oh, it's a low rank signal, so maybe not that important." Funding and financial events, obviously super important for a company like Salesforce, because, companies aren't like waking up one morning and thinking about, oh, I need a new CRM. It's a big strategic initiative. So important things like, for example, have they raised a Series C? Have they raised a Series B with headcount growth? And the important thing to note here is that AI is probably the best way to describe it is that it is an amazing research tool. That is what it is. It's a research tool. It's an analysis tool. It's an intelligence tool. It's not here to create your content. It's not here to create magically great scripts. But what it's really good at is doing high quality web research, identifying specific context, and matching that up to things that you're searching for. So, this signal strength I've ranked as high. Headcount growth, extremely important. And technology stack changes. So it will go look up public resources and identify whether or not specific logos have had, public identification of sources such as competitor contract expiration. Have they posted job postings for integration and API? So on and so forth. What you can do, which is really cool, is if you have like a Zoom Info or a 6th Sense or whatever sort of sales database, lead database, you can hook this up via API to Claude using a platform called N8N, and it will draw from that information too and analyze that sort of data and do research on that as well. I'm just demonstrating based off of public web data, but you can do all sorts of stuff with this. So I hope you get the point here. This is the main first document. Another important one is industry-specific trigger patterns. And this is depending on the vertical, right? So if you have only one vertical, like let's say you just sell to like, I don't know, financial services companies, maybe you don't need to do this. But I just said I'm a generic Salesforce account executive. So it will do things such as identifying, what sort of triggers you need to have per each different technology stack. I mean, per each industry. Like for example, is it a technology or a SaaS company, financial services, healthcare and life sciences? And it's important for you to furthermore specify where to get the data from. If you're telling it to get the data from some random blog or you don't specify, it's just going to pick some random source and you're screwed. So don't do that. Please do not do that. Just make sure you pick actually, good high quality resources in order to draw data from. So broadly speaking, this is what this sort of in this document. And an important thing I need to mention here is you got to create these documents. All right. If you want help, I can help you. That if you go down into the bio or where it's called the about section, I have a link and I can create these sort of tools for you. But you have to create the knowledge. The knowledge is critical, or else it'll just a Claude, ChatGPT, whatever. They're just going to give you a bunch of junk. So please be sure to create the knowledge. That's important. So this is the another important document. Third one, which is critical, is the actual ICP criteria document. So you need to identify and lay out clearly what is your ICP in order for the AI, for Claude to know what exactly it's looking at here. So you have to tell it, firmographic filters, what's the employee count, what sort of focus are you looking for, what sort of CRM tech stack indicators are you looking for, and again, if you have access to tools, please use APIs and hook them up to Claude. It will give you even more valuable intelligence. As is, it can do a whole lot, but if you add in those sales intelligence tools, it can do even more. So be cognizant of that. Behavioral and intent signals, like for example, if there's public articles on, like for example, whether or not they attended a Salesforce events, whether or not they initiated some sort of formal RFP, RFI process, it can look up all this stuff on the internet and let you know based off of publicly available data and publicly available data that's there right now. A couple of others. I won't go through all of these, because this video will go for like 50 minutes. But a couple others I'll bring up is another important one that's pretty important is a competitor landscape. And the reason why I say this is sometimes companies want to transition from one CRM to the other, in the case of Salesforce, or there might be some sort of buying trigger that would lead to a company wanting to go from, like, I don't know, a HubSpot to Salesforce. And that could have been publicly disclosed through like some sort of blog article. And what you can do is you can pretty quickly identify that using public resources. So, stuff like, for example, if they say anything about, like, if they use Microsoft 365, HubSpot, Oracle CX, SAP, so forth. This is important. It's not as critical as having the buyer triggers, the industry-specific trigger pattern, and the ICP, but it's an important one to consider as well, as that's a pretty critical tool. And the final piece of knowledge I want to bring to your attention is this one, disqualifications. So we've identified all the things that would make a company a green flag in terms of their buying triggers, but what about if they're a red flag, right? Because you want the AI to be honest. If you ask it, if you don't tell it to be honest, this is a hack for you guys. Make sure you tell the AI in your system prompts to be honest. If you don't tell it to be honest, it'll lie to you. It'll come up with a bunch of crap. So in this case, I put in a couple of disqualifiers. For example, are they existing Salesforce customer? Or have they announced some sort of budget freeze, layoffs? Do they have founder-led sales? Not obviously all of these are contextually relevant, but it's important to have some of these in mind while doing the prospect research. And then furthermore, discussion of, historical win-loss patterns. And, this is all knowledge you got to fill out. This is the hard part, because at the end, you'll get a really cool tool, but you got to do the work up front. And if you want someone to help you with that, again, links in the bio, feel free to book a call. So I'm going to move on here. And this is how exactly you're going to create the prompt. So I have this as well in the on my website. So feel free to visit, and you can just copy this prompt. So basically, I'm saying, hey, you're a buying signal detector for Salesforce AE. When I give you information about one or more companies, news, LinkedIn activity, earnings notes, yada, yada, you are telling me whether or not these accounts are showing real buying signals right now and why. So for each company, reply with, whether or not it's hot, warm, cold, triggers you found, why it matters, and do this now. And you got to make sure you tell it to reference the exact source where you located the data from, and do not come up randomly with stuff, important to avoid hallucination. And tell me the sources. Please be sure to tell it to tell you the sources. That's kind of important, okay? And final thing about the rules, again, I tell it multiple times to be blunt, and I give it clear identification. You can also put this in the knowledge base, but if you want to, be sure to clearly tell it about things like, for example, is it a hot source? Is it warm? Is it cold? And if you're not able to judge, if the AI is not able to find the right information, make sure to tell it to identify where exactly to locate that information from. So that can help to improve the quality of the knowledge. And I tell it to make sure to use the RAG knowledge base data. So in case you're curious, this is called a RAG knowledge base. It's called Retrieval Augmented Generation. And that's what happens when you feed AI specialized knowledge in order to improve the quality, make the AI much more useful, and make the AI much more relevant to your specific company data. If you just tell it to do it randomly based off of whatever training data it has, it'll give you very broad and very poor results. So this helps a lot with doing that, but it's imperative, really imperative, that you make sure you create these knowledge-based artifacts, or else it'll just throw out a bunch of nonsense. So hopefully you found some value in this. Again, this is how it kind of works in practice. I didn't go through the full AA example here at the end, but again, it's going to analyze American Airlines for Salesforce buying signals. It's going to do research. It'll tell you why or not it's a good lead. It'll identify some triggers, and it'll tell you why. It'll tell you why it's a cold lead, and it'll identify the sources. So that way, you can go and cross check if you don't fully believe the AI. But for the most part, if you tell it straightforward, to be honest with you, and you tell it to cite its sources, it should be pretty good in terms of giving you high quality results. So, and it could be your strategist too, because it'll tell you why it's a bad fit or a good fit. So hopefully you got some value out of this video. Feel free, book a call or visit our page if you're more interested in learning about what we do. And we install these systems, these sort of AI-enabled assistants, this one along with a bunch of others that are on our YouTube channel. So we install these for people, and all you need is a Claude AI Pro subscription, which is like $20. So if you're interested, feel free, book a call, or visit our site and watch some more of my YouTube videos. So have a good one.